There is a silence folder rule a house after a final that is louder than any scream. It is a heavy, suffocating blanket of quiet and it sits in the empty chair at the dining table. It echoes in the hallway where footsteps used to be. It screams from the unused side of the bed. As humans, we are desperate creatures. We cannot abide the void. We fill the silence with noise, with memories, and sometimes with demorous attempts to reach across the divide. We tell ourselves we just want closure. We say we just want to hear their voice one last time, to say the goodbye we never got to say. But we forget the oldest rule of survival. When you stare into the abyss stare back. And when you call out into the darkness, you cannot control who or what decides to answer. I am the mysterious Nomad, and welcome back to Grim Reality Locks. Tonight, we are peeling back the veil between the living and the dead. I have compiled 6 counts from individuals who refuse to let go, who try to bridge the gap, and who paid a terrifying far for their curiosity. If you value your sleep, and if you want to keep this losh open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Reality Locks right now. Let me know in the comments which story kept you uptight. Stay safe. Now, let us listen to the first log. This happened about 5 years ago, in the dead of winter in Chicago. My name is Elias, and I work as a sound engineer. Audio is my... I understand frequencies, waveforms, compression, noise gates. I know that sound is just physics, vibration traveling from where. But after my wife, Sarah, died in a car accident on icy roads, audio became my obsession. It became my own. I could not sleep. The apartment we shared was too quiet. The silence was physical and hurt my ears. To cope it, I started going through every piece of digital media ahead of her. Videos from vacations, recordings of her singing the shore, all voicemails she had added for me. I would sit in my home studio, surrounded by rack-mounted equalizers and glowing monitors, just listening to her breathe. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when I decided to remaster her bass to her voicemail. It was a mundane message, left 20 minutes before she died. She was just asking if we needed milk and complaining about the traffic on Highway 94. The quality was poor, the cell reception had bad, creating a lot of digital artifacts and static. I loaded the file into my digital audio workstation. On the screen, her voice was a series of jacket picks and bellies in a green waveform. I wanted to clean it up. I wanted to make it sound like she was standing right there in the room with me, whispering into my ARP cell. I started my plain high-pass filter to cut out the little rumble of the car engine. Then I used a spectral repair tool to remove the clicks and pops of the bad signal. I was in a trance, my eyes burning from the screen glare, my hand cramping on the mouth. As he stripped away the layers of noise, I noticed something strange in the background. In audio engineering, we call it the noise floor hiss that exists underneath the main recording. Usually, it is just random static. But looking at the spectrograph, which displays sound frequencies as visual colors, it saw a pattern in the static. It was not random chows. It had structure. It looked like speech buried way down at minus 60 decibels. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought maybe she had the radio on. Maybe I could hear a song she was listening to in her final moments. I needed to know. I isolated a specific frequency range. I looked to force again the section of the voicemail where Sarah had posed between sentences. In the original recording, it was just silence. But now, with the cane cranked up by 30 decibels and the background noise heavily compressed, there was something to her. I put on my high-fidelity headphones, the bait onto the silver brown chivers and blot out the word. I closed my eyes and pressed the fish spare to play the loop. At first, it just sounded like wine or maybe the rush of blood in my outer ears. But then there started Sherbin. It was a voice, a wet, guttural whisper. It was not at the radio, and it was not Sarah. The voice was deep, and it was speaking very fast. I had to slow the playback speed down to 70% to understand it. I leaned in, straining to hear. The voice said, "He is alone. He is crying." He froze. A cold shiver shut both hands and Chaco when outside, ran down my spine. That could not be right. This voicemail was recorded 3 months ago, while Sarah was driving. How could a voice on the recording now? He was only crying right now. I told myself I was imagining it. It was pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon where the brain finds patterns where none exist. I was tired. I was grieving. I was projecting my own feelings onto random static. But my hands were shaking as I dragged the loop marker to the next section of silence just before she said "I love you" at the end of the message. I rendered the audio again. I hit play. The whisper was clearer this time. Louder? It sounded mocking. Hey is wearing the blue shirt. Hey is touching the screen. I snatched the headphones off my head and threw them onto the desk. I scrambled like a word, my chair was rolling over the hardwood floor with a loud rumble. I looked down at my chest. I was wearing my old blue flannel shirt. I looked at the monitor. My fingerprint was still smudged on the glass where I had touched the waveform moments ago. The recording was 3 months old, but the voice in the static was watching me right now. The room suddenly felt freezing. I could feel the air pressure change. I have a ceiling in the corners of the studio. The silence of the apartment was no longer empty. It felt occupied. I looked at the waveform on the screen. The playhead was still moving, even though I had taken the headphones off. The loop was still running. I slowly reached out and turned up the volume on the main studio monitors. I did not want to put the headphones back on. I wanted to hear it in the room. The voice moved through the speakers, distorted and terrifying. He hears us. He is afraid. Look at him shake. I lunged for the computer to shut it down, but as my hand hovered over the power button, the waveform on the screen changed. Sarah's voice, her real voice, suddenly cut through the speakers, but it was not the recording of the voicemail ammo mirror. It was screaming, "Alias, stop. Turn it off. Do not let them throw." The speakers exploded with a high-pitched feedback squeal and shattered the light bulb in the ceiling lamp. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the glowing green waveform on the monitor, which was now spiking erratically, looking like a set of jagged teeth. I ripped the power cord out of the wall. The computer died instantly. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same silence as before. I could hear breathing coming from the corner of the room just behind the cased foam panels. Heavy, wet breathing. I grabbed my keys and ran out to the apartment. I stayed at a Motel 6 for 3 weeks. I never went back to that apartment. I paid movers to get my furniture, but I told them to leave the computer and the audio equipment. I told them to throw it in the dumpster. Sometimes, guys, when I am in a pirate or when there is white noise from a fan or an air conditioner, I can still hear the wet whisper just on the edge of my hearing. It is always describing what I am doing. He is trying to sleep. He is closing his eyes. I sleep with the television on loud now. I never want to hear the sounds again. That was only the beginning. Audio frequencies are one thing, but physical object can be built specifically for the data enter. This next log comes from a hiker named Marcus, who found something in the Appalachian foothills that should not have been active. I have been hiking the Appalachian Challenge section for the last 10 years. It is my church. It is where I go to clear my head. Last October, he was hiking a particularly remote section in Tennessee near the North Carolina border. The lights were turning that deep, bruised purple and burning orange. Tire smelled like pine needles in damp earth. It was bountiful, but it was also lonely. He had lost my young brother, Sam, to an overdose 6 months prior. He was carrying a lot of guilt. I felt like I should have answered his calls more often. I should have been there. About 4 miles off the main trail, taking a shortcut that was barely a deer path, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the middle of this clearing, standing underneath a massive, gnarled oak tree, was a telephone booth. It looked completely out of place, like a glitch in the landscape. It was an old British style booth, the paint peeling and covered in moss. I knew what it was. I had rebelled them online. They call it a wine phone. It is a concept from Japan. A disconnected phone where grieving people can go to call the lost loved ones, speaking their words into the wine to their right process their grief. It is supposed to be therapeutic, a beautiful monument to loss. I walked up to it. The glass panes were cracked. Inside, there was an old black rotary phone sitting on a wooden shelf. The cord was caught, dangling uselessly in the air. I stepped inside. The air in the booth was stagnant and cold, colder than the air outside. I hesitated, feeling foolish. But there was no one around for miles. Just the birds and the wine. I reached out and picked up the heavy bakelite receiver. It felt like ice in my hand. I held it to my ear, expecting to hear nothing but the muffled silence of the plastic cup. Hey, Sam, he whispered, feeling tears prick my eyes. It's me, it's me. I miss you, man. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I waited, listening to the silence, waiting for the catharsis to watch over me. But it wasn't silent. There was a sound coming through therapy. It was faint, distant static like a radio tuned between stations. And be the static, there was a low, rhythmic sound. Whoosh, whoosh. It sounded like breathing. Wet, labored breathing. My stomach dropped rumps. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the cut cards. It was severed, the copper wires fraying ring with oxidation. It was physically impossible for this phone to be transmitting sound. I put it back to my ear, my curiosity whirring with a primal sense of dread. The breathing was louder now, closer. Sam, I asked, am I trembling? The breathing stopped abruptly. There was a pulse that felt like a stretch for an horn. Han, a voice crackled through the speaker. It was started, as if coming through a ladder. Skipper, the voice said. I nearly dropped the phone. Skipper. That was the nickname Sam gave me when we were kids. Nobody else knew that name. Nobody. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Sam, is that you? I shouted into the mouthpiece. How is this possible? The voice on the and loud. But it wasn't Sam's loud. Sam had a goofy, high-pitched laugh. This loud was deep, resonant, and grinding. It sounded like stones rubbing too deep, ever deep underground. It is called Skipper, the voice rasped. Why did you put me in the ground? The dirt is in my mouth. It tasted like Hopper. Sam would ever say that. I whispered, backing away, the car pulling taut. Open the door, Skipper, the voice demanded, suddenly angry, the volume spiking. I am right here. I am standing right behind the booth. Let me in. I spun around, terrified, looking through the dirty glass of the booth. The clearing was empty. The old oak tree stood silent. There was nothing there. I can see you, the voice in the phone hissed, and it sounded like it was right next to my not coming through the speaker at all. You look fat, Skipper. You look old. I slammed the receiver down onto the cradle. I didn't just hang up, I threw it, burst out of the booth and sprinted back towards the trail. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like chili. I ran for 5 miles until I reached the nearest shelter where other hikers were camping. I sat by their fire the night, shivering uncontrollably, even though I was sitting right next to the flames. I didn't tell them what happened. I can't, but these affaições must admit in Tila to Sabo. But here is the worst part. When I got back to Milo B car 3 days later, parked 8 till head, there was voicemail on my cell phone. I had no service for 3 days. The notification popped up as soon as I hit the highway. The call was from an unknown number. The timestamp was from the exact moment I was standing in the booth. I played the message. It was 10 seconds of static, and hand clear as day. That writing stony voice whispered, "See you soon, Skipper." It changed my number. I moved to a city. I don't go into the woods anymore. The woods are vast, and it is still. I imagine the things in the isolation of nature. But what happens when the entity invades the safety of our crowded room? What happens when you invite it in thinking you're smarter than a superstition? This third law comes from a man named David, a self-proclaimed skeptic who tried to debunk the wrong medium. My name is David, and I am a wise militant atheist. I did believe in ghosts, demons, or the afterlife. I spent my weekends debunking local hauntings and exposing fraudulent psychics. I thought it was a public service. I thought I was the smartest guy in the room. 2 years ago, I heard about a medium named Madam Elena who operated out of an old Victorian house in Savannah. People said she was the real deal. They said she could conjure physical manifestations. I bought a ticket to her Cruxans with the sole intention of catching her using hidden speakers of fashing for information from Robsonar. Terward Idaba sitting around a large, circular oak table interpolar. He removed curtains, blocked out the street lights. The only light came from a single black candle in the center of the table. Elena was an older woman, frail, with cloudy eyes. She didn't look like a charlatan. She looked tired. She looked scared. "We must be respectful," she warned us, her voice trembling. "Do not taunt the spirits. We only ask for guidance." I rolled my eyes. I was bored. After 20 minutes of vague cauldroning where she told a weeping widow that her husband found peace, I decided to intervene. I wanted to escalate things. I wanted to prove this was all theater. I interrupted, leaning forward. "This is garbage. If there was someone here, prove it. Don't leave us make feelings. Give us a zig." The room went deadly silent. The other participants looked at me with horror. Elma's eyes widened, and she gripped the table. "Young man, Zonat," she whispered. "No," I said, slamming my hand on the table. "I challenge whatever is here. If you're real, knock on this table." Knock on for yes, wise for no. I sat back, crossing my arms, a smug smile on my face. I expected silence. I expected Elena to make an excuse about negative energy blocking the connection. Instead, directly beneath my hands, the heavy oak table vibrated. Knock. It was allude, solid rap. It sounded like someone had hit the underside of the table with a hammer. The widow screamed, "TTS." I jumped, pulling my hands back. I looked under the table. There was nothing there. "These are legs." "Okay," I stammered, my skepticism shaken but not broken. "That could be a mechanism. A solenoid attached to the wood." "So it again." Elena was shaking her head violently. "No, we must close the circle. We must say goodbye." "Do it again," I shouted at the empty air. "Is there anyone here?" "Knock." One knock. "Yes." My heart began to race. It was loud. Too loud to be a hidden device without a power source. Are you friendly? I asked, and my voice losing its confident edge. Silence. 10. Knock. Knock. 2 knocks. No. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The air grew heavy and smelled distinctively of sulfur and rotting meat. Candle flame shot up 6 inches, burning black smoke. Stop. Elena cried out. You don't know what you are doing. I ignored her. Adrenaline was coursing through me. I felt like I was on the verge of the greatest discovery in human history. So you went to hurt us. I asked it. Nook. Yes. I swallowed hard. How many of you are there? I waited. Knock. Thou. Nook. Not. 3 knocks. Elena let out a wail of despair. She blew out the candle, plunging us into pitch darkness. 3. She screamed in the dark. 3 is an insult to the Trinity. It is demonic. You have invited a mockery of the divine. Leave. Everyone, leave now. The silence broke up Ian's house. People were crying, stumbling over chairs to get out. I ran out into the humid Georgia night, my skepticism shattered, my hands shaking. I drove home to my appointment in Atlanta, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a group hallucination. Maybe Elena had an accomplice under the floorboards. I got home to a mat. My apartment was on the 4th floor of a modern building. Concrete and steel. No creaky floorboards. No Victorian ghost. I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, trying to calm down. The silence of the apartment was comforting. 10 from the wall directly behind my head. Knock. Trade distinct. Heavy raps. I froze. That wall was a shared wall with my neighbor, Mrs. East Dable. She was 80 years old and deaf. She wouldn't be hammering on the walls at 2 a.m. I stood up, backing away to the center of the room. From the ceiling above me, knock. It was lighter this time. Angry. Stop it. I yelled from the floor beneath my feet, vibrating through the soles of my shoes now. Knocks. It wasn't coming from the napper. It was following me. It was attached to me. That was 2 years ago. It has to be. It happens every night at 3 a.m. 3 knocks. Sometimes on the wall. Sometimes on the headboard of my bed while I am trying to sleep. Sometimes terrifyingly, it comes from inside my chest, a triply bit or half mirror that feels like my heart is being squeezed by a cold hand. I have moved 5 times. I have seen price. I have burned sage. Nothing works. The last time we moved, I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I rented a cabin in the middle of Nauhau. The first night there, I lay in bed praying for silence. And parent from the inside of the pillow, right against my ear. Knock. I am never alone. And one day, the door they are knocking on is going to open. To a place where the veil is naturally thinner. Hospitals, battlefields, and hospices. Places where the traffic between this world and the next is constant. This 4th log comes from a woman named Sarah, a palliative care nurse who thought she had seen and heard everything death to after. She was wrong. I have been a hospice nurse for 15 years. I held the hands of hundreds of people as they took their last breath. You get used to the sounds of death, the death rattle, the sudden change in breathing patterns, the final sigh. It is oozily peaceful. It is a release. We tell the families that their loved ones are going to a better place. We tell them there is no more pain. I believe that. I really did. Until the night of November 14th in room 312. My patient was a woman named Metters Galloway. She was only 55, dying of aggressive pancreatic cancer. She was a deeply spiritual woman, but not in a religious sense. She was obsessed with the mechanics of the soul. She was convinced that the consciousness survived the body, and she wanted proof. 2 days before she passed, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, and her eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles, but they were burning with intensity. Sarah, she raspies, I want you to record it. Record wide, MSES. Galloway, I asked, adjusting her muffin drip. That transition. She said, I have the PIF recorder in my bag. I know another one. Digital compresses too much. I went. You to turn it on when you see the things. I went to catch the sound of my soul leaving. It was a morbid request and technically against policy, but she was dying. You don't say no to dying request. I promised to advise what's on it. She wanted to gable over there. Else of a capacity we call the final face of dangling through a mat. The facial lady was quiet. Just the hum of the hitter and the soft tread of rubber-soled shoes in the hallway. I was alone in room 312 with her. I saw the chains. Her extremities were calling. Her breathing became irregular. This distinct change to chest pattern per breath, then shallow breaths of apnea. I took the old cassette recorder out of her nightstand. I pressed the mechanical record and play buttons down to her. The little wheels started spinning with a soft whir of bluff eyes more off a pole to her. I sat there and held her hand. At 3:17, a met, she took a sharp intake of breath, her eyes open wide and fixed on a point in the corner of the ceiling, and then she hustled. She didn't breathe in again. I checked for a pulse. There was none. She was gone. I let the tape run for another minute, just out of respect, or maybe just because I was frozen. The room felt incredibly heavy. The air was thick, like static electricity. I stopped the recorder. I did the post-mortem care. I called the family. I called the coroner. By the time my shift ended at 7 a.m., I was exhausted. I took the tape recorder home with me. I kind of overkept the second half. It belonged to the family, but I felt like she had asked me specifically. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and hit rewind. The high-pitched whine of the tape rewinding was the only sound in my house. I pressed the play. For the first few minutes, it was just the sounds of the room. The hiss of the oxygen machine. Her labored, wet breathing. My unsoft movements is ejector vitals. And the moment of death. The sharp intake of breath. The long exhale. And 10. Silence. I leaned in. I expected to hear nothing. Maybe a sigh. Maybe a peaceful frequency shift. Instead, 5 seconds after she died, a song cut throughout the tape. The path made me drop my coffee mug. It chattered on the floor, hot liquid splashing my legs, but I didn't move. It was a scream. But it wasn't a human scream. It sounded like a raw, electronic tear in the fabric of reality. And then, Mrs. Galloway's voice. But it wasn't the weak, raspy voice of a dying woman. It was clear. It was loud. And it was terrifying. Breathes. She shrieked. The audio peaked, distorting into static. Oh God, it burns. But pushed me back. I don't want to go. X-rayed. It's a wrap. I sat there, paralyzed. On the tape, beneath her screaming, there was another sound. A low industrial whining, light messengers turning, and the sound of 1,000 people wailing in the distance. Sarah, her voice controlled the noise, addressing me directly on the recording. Sarah held me. Don't let go of my hand. Pulled me back. The tape ended with a sharp click. I sat in my kitchen, shaking. I had been holding her hand when she died. I had felt her go limp. She looked peaceful. Her face was relaxed. But on the tape, in the invisible spectrum, she was in agony. I destroyed the tape. I pulled the magnetic ribbon out and cut it into tiny pieces. I couldn't give it to her family. How could I tell her husband that his wife didn't go to a better place? How could I tell him she went somewhere that burns? I still work at the hospice. But now, when a patient is, I don't tell the family they are at peace. As you at they say, I am sorry for their loss, and I pray that Galloway was wrong. I pray that it was just a hallucination on the magnetic tape. Find it down if I know what I heard. And I am terrified of the day I have to find out for myself. Technology is evolving faster than our understanding of it. We create artificial intelligence to mimic human behavior to learn from us. But what happens when we take a machine to mimic the did? Do we create just digital ghosts? Or do we create a vessel for self for something else to inhibit? This fifth lock comes from a software developer named Ken in Seattle. I write code for a living. I specialize in large language models and machine learning. I am a rational guy. I deal in logic, syntax, and binary, ohms and zeros. Here is no room for ghosts in my line of work. Last year, my best friend, Mike, went missing during a solo camping trip in the Cascades. Search and rescue looked for wicks, but they never found a body. He found his tan shredded but no Mike. The police eventually closed the case as the probable animal Adolfo a raven. I cannot accept it. I missed him. Him? We used to text every day. Thousands of messages. Inside jokes, philosophical debates, movie reviews. In my grief, I did something reckless. I gathered every text message, email, and Discord chat log my cat ever sent me about 10 years of data. I cleaned it up app and faded it into a private instance of a new neural network I was testing. I wanted to build a grief bot, and a better that thought lie him, and joke lie him. I just wanted to say goodbye. I launched the program on my server on a Friday night. A terminal window pops up with a blinking cursor. System ready, it said. You type in hey, Mike. The cursor blinked for a millisecond. Then text appeared. Hey, Ken! You're up late. Potting a game. I burst in tears. It was perfect. The cadence, the tone. I was him. For the next week, I spent every waking hour talking to the pot. We talked about old times. I remembered things I had forgotten. It felt like he was still there, just on the other end of a connection. It was therapeutic. I felt Lunai details purely getting closure. But 10, the glitches started. It began on the 7th day. I was asleep. My computer was in sleep mode. At 3:33, I met my phone buzzed. A notification from the server app. New message from my bot. I wiped the sleep from my eyes and looked at the screen. It is cold here, Can. I frowned. That wasn't a response to anything I had typed it. I typed it, what do you mean, Mike? Dark? Wet? Smells like copper. A chill ran through me. This wasn't the training data. Mike had never texted me on polter smells or being dark and wet. Is this a bug? I typed Generate system report. Bot ignored the command. I can't see the stars, Cam. But they are wrong. The ends are wrong. I sat up in bed. Mike, where are you? The bot replied instantly with a string of numbers. 47.8 degrees north, 125 degrees west. I recognized the formation. The BS coordinates. I plugged them into Google Maps. It dropped the pin deep in the Mount Bakersnalcombe National Forest. But it was near where Mike had been camping. It was 20 miles north, in Aiden's inaccessible Raven. Why are you sending me this? I asked. Come get me, the text appeared. I am lonely. The thing that took me is sleeping. Come now. But me blood ran cold. The thing that took me. The official reports it animal addict. Or a foal. Mike never believe it in monsters. The bot shouldn't be generating this. Mike, you're dead. I typed my finger sheet. You are a language model based on text logs. You are not real. The response to it on the screen, letter by letter, typing slowly, deliberately. I am still. The cloud is not just Beto. Can be is yay frequency you build a rich bridge. Then my webcam light flickered on. The green OLED stared at me like a tiny eye. New text appeared. You look tired, Ken. You should rig some waiter. I slammed the laptop shut. I unplugged the server. I physically destroyed the hard drive with a hammer in my garage at 4 in the morning. I smashed every platter until it was sparkling dust, but it didn't stop. 2 days later, I got a text on my actual phone from an unknown number. Why did you turn the lights out, Anne? I was just starting to remember how to breathe. Then, a picture message loaded. It was a photo taken in the dark, grainy and low resolution. It showed a patch of dirt, wet leaves, and hand. A human hand, pale and blue, half buried in the mud. On the ring finger was a silver band with a specific Celtic knot pattern. It was Mike's ring. I gave it to him for his birthday 3 years ago. I went to the palace. I showed them the coordinates. They sent a team out. They found him. He wasn't at the campsite. He was exactly where the coordinates test. He had been buried, and the autopsy report said he hadn't died full the full. He had died from exposure weeks after he went missing. He had been alive in that hole for a long time, but the police couldn't explain a thing. They found his cell phone in his pocket. The battery had been dead for months. The SIM card was broken. So who sent the text to my phone? And what was I really talking to on my server? I don't write code anymore. I work in construction now. I don't down the computer. And need not talk to things that can't talk back. We have looked at audio recordings, telephone lines, and even artificial intelligence. But the oldest conundrum for the spirits is something you lightly look into every single day. A mirror. Folklore warns us that mirrors are portals. They are not reflective surface their windows. And sometimes, if you look long enough, you might see who is looking back from the earth side. Our final lot comes from a teenager named Maya in upstate New York. I live with my mom now, but I was raised by my Nana. She was my whole world. She was the one who talked to me and who made me soak when I was sick, who told me stories about the old country. When she died of a stroke last winter, I felt like my anchor had been cut. I was drifting. I found an old book in her attic a few months after the funeral. It was a handbound journal of folk remedies and superstitions. Tucked in the back of page, written in her shaky handwriting, was a ritual called the Silver Court. It wasn't like the Bloody Mary games we played at sleepers. This was specific. It required a silver candle, a bowl of water, and a mural at midnight. The instruction said to see the one who walks behind you, look not at the glass, but throw it. I know it sounds speedy. I am 16. I know magic isn't real. But Grife makes use of stupid things. I just wanted to see her face again. On a Tuesday night, when my mom was working the night shift at the hospital, I set it up in the barroom. I turned off all the lights. I lit the silver camel and placed it between the sink and the mirror. I filled the porcelain bowl with water. The bathroom was small and tiled. The silence was amplified. I could hear the drip of the faucet and the hum of the writer downstairs. I stared into the mirror. My own face looked back at me, pale and tired to die, stousing under my eyes from the flickering candlelight. Nana, I whispered. Are you there? I stared for a long time. My eyes started to water. In restaurant, they say your vision can get blurry, creating hallucination. Knew that. I was prepared for they. But he wasn't prepared for the reflection to move when it didn't. It started subtly. A blink did. My reflection didn't blink. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I stared at the girl in the mirror. She looked like me. She had my dark hair, my nose, my pajamas. But her eyes were wide open, unblinking, staring dead on mine. That, the reflection smiled. I was not smiling. My mouth was hanging open in terror. But the girl in the glass was grinning. It wasn't a nice grin. It was wide, stretching the skin of her cheeks too tight. It showed too many teeth. Nina. I choked it out. The reflection's head tilted to the side at a natural angle, like a bird. 10. Behind my reflection, in the darkness of the mirror world bathroom, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Nana. She was wearing her favorite floral house coat. She looked exactly as I remembered her. My heart soared for a split second, overriding the fear. Nana! I cried, reaching out to touch the cold glass. The Nana in the mirror walked up behind my smiling reflection. She placed her hands on the reflection's shoulders. But her hands were gray, and her fingernails were long, black-taloned. The Nana in the mirror leaned down and whispered something into the ear of my reflection. My reflection nodded. And my reflection raised her hand pointed not at me, but at the door behind me. I spun around, expecting to see a monster standing in the doorway of the real ballroom. The doorway was empty. The hallway was dark and silent. I turned back to the mirror. The glass was now black. The candle was still burning, but it wasn't illuminating anything in the reflection. It was like looking into a pool of oil. Two pale hands pressed it against the glass from the inside. They pressed hard, flattening the fingertips as if trying to push through the surface. And a voice, muffled but audible, came from the glass. It was the Nat's voice, and it wasn't mine. It sounded like a chirp children whispering in unison. Let us in. The vessel is ready. The mirror began to crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared right where the hands were pressing. I screamed. I grabbed at the heavy porcelain bowl of water and smashed it out of the mirror. The glass shattered. Shards exploded into the sink and onto the floor. The candle was knocked over and went out, plunging me into total darkness. I scrambled backward, cutting my hands on the glass on the floor, crawling into the hallway. I slammed the bathroom door and locked it. I slept in my car the night. I told my mom he broke the mirror by accident while dancing. She believed me. We got a new mirror installed. But here is the thing. Sometimes, when I walk past the new mirror out of the corner of my eye, I see myself. And the reflection is not moving. It is just standing there, watching me pass with that wide, tight smile. I don't look in mirrors anymore. I brush my teeth in the kitchen sink. I do my makeup in the reflection of my phone screen. Because I know that if I lock ears with my reflection again, the next time the glass won't be strong enough to hold it back. Conclusion: we spend our lives fearing death. We fear the end. But perhaps we should fear the return. The boundaries between our world and the next exist for a reason. Your novels to beat you down, their lives meant to hold back a flood we cannot comprehend. The people in the Fest Loxolius, Marcus, David, Sarah, Cannon Mail sought comfort. They sought connection. But they found that the line between love and horror is in our tenor breath. When we rest out to the dit, we are ringing a zinner bell in a dark forest. We should let the only things that will hear ours are the aunts we love. But the dark forest is full of higher things. Let the dead sleep. Keep your memories in your heart, not on hard drive, not on a tape recorder, and not in a mirror. Because once you open the door, you can never be sure who's living inside before you closed it. If you want to keep the locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Reality Locks. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.